Hey everyone, welcome to Wildlife Inspired. I'm your host, Scott Keys, and this is your channel for photography, for wildlife, and for wildlife photography. In today's video, we're going to talk about this idea of photography as an art versus a science. And I'm going to tell you about the comment on my YouTube channel that inspired this right after this. For those that have been watching for a while, you know that I have different segments on my channel, and one of the segments I do is called Quick Thoughts, and these are just inspired by comments or feelings or something that happened, usually involving a backstory, and I'll give you the backstory for today's video in just a second. I do other playlists over here, and I'll put some of the basic concepts or these categories that I break my channel into. If you're curious about any of these or you like my Quick Thoughts videos, make sure you hit over to the playlist and check out my playlist on Quick Thoughts. So what is today's video about? This idea of art versus science, and why do I care? Well, there was a video that I did recently on a macro setup. I tested some Olympus equipment. I had been wanting to do this for a while, and I had this premise that micro four thirds sensors or smaller sensors like this experience this concept of diffraction earlier or at a different point than my full frame camera. To make a long story short, I couldn't understand why the Olympus system outperformed my Nikon system when it came to this idea of diffraction. And I asked the audience because I'm not an expert on Olympus, and macro photography is something that I feel I have an expertise in some ways and I lack in others. And I make that very transparent, by the way. Down in the comments, I got so many answers on this one, by the way. I got answers that contradicted each other. I got answers that were very science-based and optically based. I got answers from people that didn't watch the whole video and didn't even understand the point of it. And one or two of them were even critical about proving my hypothesis. It was a lot of answers. One of the answers, or one of the comments, had come out and said, if you don't understand this, you shouldn't be teaching macro photography. So this one comment really got to me in a couple ways. So I had this idea about science versus art, and then I had this concept about teaching others. Like, what's the qualifications? And I can't do this in one Quick Thoughts video. So this one short comment inspired two Quick Thoughts videos. The first of being, what matters and what is photography? Because a lot of the comments, scientifically based, were appropriate for this video because I wasn't sure why it was happening. So yes, the science matters. But that one comment, it felt out of place. It felt like it was saying, if you don't understand the science behind this, you shouldn't consider yourself a photographer. That's what I want to talk about. And maybe I'm reading into that one little comment. Certainly the teaching part I'm going to deal with in the second video. But it made me think about this idea of science versus art and what do you need to know. So that's the backstory related to this video that I did on macro setups. And for a second, just indulge me. I'm going to show you some of my macro photography. And in every video I make, I say, I don't claim to be an expert, meaning I didn't go to school for 5 years to understand the physics of light. But I think I know enough about it to produce some pretty attractive images. I'm going to show you a couple of what I do. This is my style. I think it's nice. Now, we all know that art is subjective. So some people are going to look at these images and say, wow, that's really pretty. Others are going to say, Scott, it's not even macro photography because you're not magnified at a 1-to-1 ratio. So therefore, these are just images or just pictures that you like. Generically, often people refer to macro photography to be just shooting smaller subjects. And while there's a technical definition, I'm not going to get into that. But yeah, I consider this macro photography. There's a lot of science involved in all photography. And as you get closer in terms of magnification, as you increase your magnification of a subject, that science comes more into play. However, I will vigorously defend my supposition that science is not what photography is about. I don't even know how much it helps you become a better photographer. So in this video, I think if I ask most people, is photography science or art? I think most people are going to say art. What I really want to know is, how much of the science do you need to know to be good at the art? Do you need to know any? We can put this on a scale of 1 to 10. So a 1 being like you barely understand the science of photography, and a 10 being you are a doctorate level teacher who understands all of it, every formula, everything about the optics. You understand every menu in the camera. I've got some examples of this, by the way, and I want to talk about this idea of just real life experiences, people I know, where they're at on this spectrum. So at what level do you need to? Is it like mandatory? You have to have a level 3 understanding of photography to be great at producing the art, or does it even matter at all? Is it literally just take a camera, make things that please you, hope it please others? Who cares about the rest? That's a 1. A 1 is just take the camera, do whatever you want. You don't care about anything else but what comes out of that camera. Is it the input or is it the output? Most people, I think, are going to agree that it's the output that matters. Like, who cares about how much you know? Who cares about the understanding of it? All that really matters is, at the end of the day, you produce an image that you love first and that maybe other people see value in. Now, I've got other feelings about this in terms of art and theory and say like color theory and composition. I do think there's a lot of value in understanding that. So when I say the science, maybe it's a little bit beyond just the X's and O's, like the technical parts, the formula. I did this video on diffraction, right? Let me put a formula up here. This is the formula for diffraction. Now, I got to look down here because I can't remember any of this stuff, right? This formula states, like scientifically, the diameter of an airy disk is equal to, and I got to read this, is equal to the constant of the Fraunhofer diffraction equation for circular aperture times lambda times the f number or f-stop of your lens. Who cares? Like, what I need to know about diffraction is I go over to my little table over there, I get a new lens and a new body, I take some test pictures, I shoot at different apertures, I visually look on the computer later and I say, this system works for me up to f8. Over f11, it gets a little fuzzy. I don't want to use it over f11. That's all I need to know. That's my understanding of diffraction at this level. That's really all I need to know. Now, I may understand more. I may be curious about it. I may want to know some of this other stuff. But to make me a good photographer, do I have to understand that formula and how it relates to my macro photography? Probably not. If I'm doing a hyper macro, like a 100-to-1 magnification, maybe I got to get a little bit more scientific in here than just going out into my native plant yard and taking some pictures of bugs. For me, photography and the understanding of photography has always been much more about what makes a pleasing image, not the physics behind the process. And when I make my videos on YouTube, and we'll get into this a little bit in the second part of this where I talk about teaching, when I make my videos, I try to be very conscious of where I am and where others are, and how much do I really need to know to explain something to somebody. I can explain diffraction to somebody in 5 minutes. Like if they came over and did a workshop with me on macro photography and somebody says, back to that premise of like, you're not qualified, I could teach a macro or diffraction in 5 minutes and that's it, we move on. Like I'm gonna focus on the insects in my yard. I'm gonna explain what they are, how they behave, how they act, what the subjects are, how the lighting is in my yard, what the colors look like on this plant, which plants are blooming, which plants are flowering. I'm gonna focus on the environment. I'm a wildlife photographer first, man. And when I talk about what gets me excited, the process gets me excited, not the formula, or not how the light got into the lens, or not the number of photons that hit the sensor on the back of the camera. So, art or photography. Now, I told you I was going to give you some examples of people. So before I get to that, I just down in the comments, I want to get back to that idea of how much do you need to know. You could do this numerically, or you could just kind of verbalize it. What understanding do you have to have of the science of photography? I want to avoid the art part because to me, the composition and the color theory, that's probably part of this too, but the science of photography, how much do you have to understand that? And I will argue you don't need to know much past the basics, and you could be a great photographer. Here's my examples. I thought about this. As I do these quick thoughts videos, sometimes they're just like off the cuff. Most of how I do these is I take some notes. Like, what do I want to think about? What points do I want to get across? And then I talk about those points. And as I was doing this, I thought about, okay, let me think of the 10 best photographers that I know of. And I kind of listed out some names. Now, I'm not going to put them down here, But there's a few that are really bright. I don't know that any of them are formally trained as photographers, meaning they didn't go to school for photography. What most of them have in common, and I thought about, and I hate to use the term intelligence or how smart people are because it's so subjective, but it is clear when somebody's smart. Like, you know that, right? You talk to somebody, you're like, hey, this person's really smart. So when I looked at these names, I thought, how smart are they and how educated are they about photography? Could they explain some of the physics behind it, or could they explain some of the electronic processes that go on? What I found is that most of them are pretty intelligent or fairly smart. None of them, of the 10 names that I came up with, the 10 that I really admire, none of them were like classically trained photographers, and none of them could probably explain the science of photography at the level that I got hit with in the comments about this. And back to that video that I made on macro photography and the Olympus systems, I wanted some scientific answers, so that's okay. But when I thought about the people that I really admired, like what the commonality was, they were driven and had a standard, and they had this idea about continuous improvement. They were intellectually curious, but not just about one thing. They just seemed to want to be great at what they did, and they pushed themselves to do it. Most of the best photographers, by the way, especially in wildlife photography, what I do, it's because of their work outside. It's what they do beyond the studio and beyond the educational books and beyond the learning. It's basically what they do out in nature that makes them great at what they do. Of that 10, and I don't want to insult any of these because some of them were actually friends of mine. There were a couple that I'd say, like, they're not like super smart. They're just kind of like, they're just average people, right? But they're really, really good at this thing of photography. Then I took 3 or 4 people and I thought, let me think of the 3 smartest people I know. The 3 most classically, the 3 people that I can go to and say, like, listen, can you explain to me the signal boost of a camera and how it relates to the photons entering the pupil, like hitting the sensor? Like, give me, how do you explain it? And they would be able to. They'd actually be able to. Some of them could. I think one person that probably remembers the formulas for this stuff and can give this to me, right? So these are like genius photographers, and I'm certainly not going to put their names up here. I'm flattering them by saying they're geniuses. When I look at their photography, it's not nearly as inspiring as the other 10 that I mentioned. And I have this feeling that sometimes the smarter we are, it almost hurts us artistically. It might be the way our brains are wired. It might be the work in the field isn't there. Like, I don't know what the disconnect is, but I have this feeling that the smartest people, the brightest, the most intelligent, the most learned and educated photographers aren't always the best ones. What do you think? Am I off base on this? Don't just jump in the comments right away. Think about it first. Think about the names of the people you admire in your genre of photography, and then think about how much they know about photography. It might be because I'm a wildlife photographer. Like, that might skew this a lot, because I do think a lot of what I admire in people is their work out in the field. So that's my video for you today. In the next video, I'm going to talk about the qualifications to teach others. I think this is going to be a really, really neat video. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications. It'll let you know when I have a new video out. Down in the comments today, how much do you have to, how educated in photography do you have to be? Is it more science or more art? Does it depend on the genre? Is macro photography more science than art? I don't know. For me, it is all art. Your level of understanding probably is basic. So when I said put it on a scale of 1 to 10, you could just say basic, moderate, advanced. I don't care how you do it. If I was using a scale of 1 to 10, I'd say your knowledge of photography should be like a 3 or 4 and you could be great at that very low number. It doesn't have to be an advanced knowledge of photography. I know people are going to, and you may be offended by that statement. Somebody who has like a doctorate degree or a master's degree, or you devoted your whole life to understanding the science behind photography, and you're I don't know, like maybe you're an electrical engineer that does this. Don't be offended by it. I'm not saying that it's bad. What I am saying is you don't need it to be great. You let me know down in the comments on today. And stay tuned for my next follow-up video on this exact same premise, or that same comment that inspired this first video. I've got another one, which is what are the qualifications of teaching others photography? I hope you enjoyed my quick thoughts video today. And as always, I hope we can continue to find inspiration in wildlife together.